I've worked night shifts for the better part of a decade, but nothing about that morning felt familiar. I was supposed to clock out at 7, but the last surgery wrapped earlier than expected, so I left around 5:30. By 6, I was pulling into the lot of our apartment complex. The old beige one off Abercorn Street with too many potholes and neighbors who pretended they didn't see each other. Usually, I'd K***l the engine, sit for a minute, stretch my back, and head upstairs to find Hannah still asleep. Face pressed into her pillow, the bedside lamp still on because she always forgot to switch it off. But that morning, I noticed something unusual before I even reached the building. There was a car I'd never seen before. Not just any car. A polished black Mercedes, the kind with dark-tinted windows and the quiet, expensive kind of presence you only really notice when it doesn't fit. It was parked right in front of the entrance. Not in a spot, just idling like whoever was in it didn't plan to stay long. At first, I thought maybe someone was picking up a neighbor, or a rideshare just waiting. But then the passenger door opened, and that's when my stomach dropped. Out stepped Hannah, my wife. She wasn't supposed to be arriving home. She was supposed to already be home. The first thing I noticed was that she was still wearing the same short black dress from the night before. She'd said she was meeting some potential clients from her firm. A late dinner with new partners. Nothing serious. I joked about how dressed up she looked for a business meeting. She laughed, said something about women having to overdo it to be taken seriously. I didn't argue. But there she was, stepping out of someone else's luxury car at 6 in the morning like a scene from a movie. Except it wasn't a movie. It was my life. Her heels dangled from one hand, as if she'd walked barefoot for a while. Her makeup, smudged at the corners, not from sleep, but from time and maybe tears. Her lipstick had faded unevenly, and her eyeshadow had settled into tired lines. Her hair, normally sleek and controlled, was pulled back into a loose, messy bun that screamed improvised damage control. On her arm, she carried a men's blazer, way too big to be hers. Navy blue, looked expensive. And it wasn't just for show. It hung over her forearm like something she'd needed, not borrowed. I could see the faint imprint on her bare shoulders where it had sat most of the night. And then on her other elbow was a handbag. Not her handbag. This one was beige, quilted leather, high-end, designer, definitely not something we owned. Hannah's style was minimalist. Her usual tote was black canvas with a tiny silver logo and a stain from where she spilled matcha on it 2 years ago. She used it every day. This bag didn't even look like something she'd borrow. It looked like it belonged to someone else entirely. The way she moved told me everything I needed to know. She didn't notice my car right away. She was focused on the door, probably thinking about how to slip inside unnoticed. But halfway through the lot, her eyes caught mine. And in that exact second, something in her shifted. Her whole body flinched just for a moment, then straightened. She walked toward me with purpose, a polite smile already forming. Not surprised, not nervous, just fast with the story, like she had it queued up. "Thomas," she said, her voice breezy, as if we'd just run into each other at the grocery store. "You're back early. I thought you were on until 7? I didn't say a word. She glanced at the blazer draped over her arm, then back at me. "Oh God, this probably looks bad." "Huh?" She gave a nervous little laugh, the kind people give when they're stalling. And then she launched into it. "So, okay, it was a mess. Total disaster. Marcy had too much wine, you know how she gets? And the guy who was supposed to drive her bailed because his wife called or something. And then John, remember John? From that holiday party 2 years ago? Family friend of Amanda's. Anyway, he offered to drive us back because he wasn't drinking. I told him we were fine, but he insisted." I raised an eyebrow. "John. Old family friend." The name sounded like it was picked carefully. Safe. Familiar. Plausible. "And the jacket? I know it looks ridiculous," she said, shaking it. "The AC in his car was freezing, and I didn't want to get sick. My shoes were K***ling me, so I took them off in the car." "The bag." She hesitated. "That's Marcy's," she continued, voice a bit too steady now. She couldn't find her keys and kind of panicked, so I was holding her stuff while she searched for them. She gestured to the building, like we should go upstairs now and forget this happened. But I didn't move. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I didn't even blink. I just looked at her. Really looked. Her skin was flushed around her collarbone, the kind of flush that doesn't come from sun or wine. She had a faint indentation on her shoulder where a hand might have rested too long. The back of her dress had a wrinkle running up the middle, like it had been tugged or sat on awkwardly. Her eyes darted, first to me, then to the car still idling behind her, then back. I could smell cologne, but not on the blazer. It was on her. Not my scent. Not hers. Something richer, muskier. Too bold to belong to John the family friend. Still, I said nothing. I just walked past her, up the stairs, the way I would after any long shift. Except this time, my heart wasn't heavy from fatigue. It was burning. She followed me, her flip-flops slapping against the concrete as she hurried to catch up. Inside the apartment, the air felt different. Colder. Quieter. Like even the walls were waiting to hear what came next. She placed the handbag carefully on the counter. Too carefully. Like she didn't want to touch it more than necessary. I sat down on the edge of the couch. Didn't take off my shoes. Didn't lean back. Just watched as she peeled off the blazer and hung it over a chair like it wasn't a confession made of wool and cologne. "You're being quiet," she said softly. I looked at her. The woman I married. The same face, same eyes, same voice, but something was off now. Like I'd been staring at a painting for years and suddenly saw the cracks under the varnish. "Long night," I replied. And that was all. I didn't ask about John. Or Marcy. Or the bag. Or the scent. She made coffee. I let her. We sat in the kitchen like we used to, her sipping from her favorite mug. Me pretending not to notice the lipstick smear that didn't match the shade she left the house in. Outside, Savannah started waking up. A dog barked. Somewhere, a car alarm chirped twice. But inside, something had broken. And even though neither of us said it aloud, we both knew. This was the beginning of something neither of us would be able to walk back from. I didn't ask her anything that morning. She went through her routine like nothing had happened. Took a shower, made oatmeal, hummed along to some playlist on her phone like she wasn't dragging the scent of another man through our front door. I sat at the table, stirring a cup of coffee I didn't drink. Eyes fixed on the steam curling from the mug like it might whisper the truth she refused to say. I should have asked. I should have confronted her. But I didn't. Maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe some part of me still hoped there was a version of this story where I was wrong. But silence has a way of inviting memories to speak. And once they started, they didn't stop. They didn't come in order. They arrived like broken glass. Scattered, sharp, painful to look at too closely. But piece by piece, they formed something undeniable. 6 months ago, Hannah started going to the gym. That alone wasn't strange. Lots of people go through phases. But this was different. Came out of nowhere. One day, she was complaining about how cold it was to get up early. The next, she was signing up for bar classes, asking me to help pick out new leggings, buying protein shakes, and counting macros. She hated health trends. Used to laugh at people who posted sweaty mirror selfies. But now she was obsessed. And not in a new hobby way, in a reinventing herself kind of way. At the time, I was proud. I told her she looked great. Encouraged her. Told myself this was about confidence, wellness, a new routine. But now I could see it for what it was. The first diversion. The first thread in the unraveling. Then there was the lingerie. Hannah never cared for it. Not once in our years together did she mention feeling S*XY in lace. She used to wear soft cotton stuff. Comfortable, practical. We used to joke that we'd both married for personality and snacks, not seduction. That changed quickly. She started coming home with bags from boutique shops. I'd find receipts in the trash for things I'd never seen her wear. I remember asking once, half joking, "You trying to impress someone?" She smirked and said, "Just trying to impress myself." I didn't push it. I didn't want to be that guy. The insecure, clingy husband who couldn't handle his wife feeling herself. I was raised better than that. But God, if only I had asked then. Then came the phone. She started turning it face down. That was the first clue. It used to sit screen up, buzzing through dinner or Netflix marathons. Then one day it flipped, and stayed flipped. When I asked why, she said the buzzing was distracting. Then she started taking it into the bathroom, something she never used to do. Shower time became text time. Long, quiet, giggling to herself kind of text time. I told myself it was just work. She was climbing the ladder fast. More responsibility, more networking. It made sense. It had to. Then the social media shift. We used to post everything together. Photos at Forsyth Park, selfies on weekend getaways, even goofy stuff like our attempts at cooking new recipes. Slowly, her profile changed. Couple photos disappeared, replaced with solo sh*ts, work events, polished captions about ambition and independence. And those vague quotes. You know the kind, if you don't value me, watch me go, or boundaries are a form of self-respect. At the time, I supported it, encouraged her growth. But now, it read like a script written by someone trying to justify things to themselves. And then there was the receipt. I found it in her coat pocket while looking for gloves. She always wore that beige trench with the wide lapels and the inner satin lining. The receipt was from a restaurant down by the river, the Hollow Branch. Romantic lighting, jazz music, the kind of place we used to go to on anniversaries before life got busy. The timestamp was 10:42 p.m. on a Thursday. I remember that night. She said she had a client meeting that ran long. When I asked if she wanted dinner when she got home, she said she already ate. A salad from the cafe near her office. But that receipt wasn't from a cafe. It was a two-person dinner. And next to the receipt was a movie stub. She hated movie theaters. Said they were too loud, that people talked too much, that the seats made her back hurt. But there it was, a ticket for a 9:15 showing of some romantic drama I'd never heard of. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, holding it in my hands, feeling like an idiot. She came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, kissed me on the head, and I stuffed the stub back where I found it. Why? I don't know. Maybe I didn't want to ruin that moment. Maybe I was afraid that if I asked the question, I'd get the answer. There was another time, more recent, when she came home from the gym. Said the instructor kept them late for cool-down stretches. She came in smiling, tossed her bag by the door, and kissed me quickly before heading to the shower. But she didn't smell like sweat. She smelled like cologne. Not body spray or deodorant. Actual cologne. It clung to her neck like fingerprints. I remember hugging her, holding her just a beat too long, trying to figure it out. She pulled away faster than usual. "You're sweaty," she said. But I wasn't. She was just uncomfortable. There was a pattern, and I had ignored all of it. I told myself marriages go through seasons. People change. Maybe she was just finding herself. Maybe I'd been too focused on work, too passive, too tired. Maybe the spark had just faded. I blamed myself. One night, I made a joke about her phone habits. She got defensive, said I was being controlling, that she was allowed privacy, that just because we were married didn't mean she owed me access to every part of her life. I apologized, let her win the argument, even made her tea afterward. But I see it clearly now. It wasn't stress. It wasn't some late-blooming career renaissance. It was distance. Quiet, steady distance. Like someone gradually turning down the volume of a song you used to dance to together until all you hear is your own breathing. That morning, sitting in our kitchen while she scrolled through her phone and stirred sugar into her coffee, I realized something. I'd spent months pretending not to notice the shift, pretending not to hear the silence that had replaced laughter, pretending that the way she no longer reached for my hand wasn't a warning. I glanced over at the blazer still draped on the back of the chair. It wasn't just fabric. It was evidence. She'd said it belonged to John, an old family friend, the one who was always conveniently around but never seemed to show up in photos. He'd come up in passing conversations, usually as someone doing her a favor, driving her home, helping her network, offering advice. Now I saw it for what it was. A name used like a shield, like camouflage. There were no raised voices between us that morning. No accusations. No ultimatums. But the silence? It was louder than anything I could have shouted. I watched her sip her coffee, swipe her screen, tuck her legs beneath her on the stool like she always did when she was trying to look relaxed. But I wasn't looking at her the same way anymore. The shift had happened. A quiet, irreversible shift. And it was only a matter of time before the truth she buried started to rise. Piece by piece, until it demanded to be seen. The morning after Hannah came home in another man's jacket, I did what I always did after a night shift. I slept through most of the day. Or tried to. It's strange how the body can lie still, but the mind won't rest. I kept seeing the scene in my head. Her stepping out of that car, barefoot, holding that unfamiliar handbag like it wasn't burning a hole through the lie she told. I could hear her voice looping in my head, cheerful and rehearsed. John gave us a ride. Marcy was drunk. The jacket was for the AC. A string of justifications so fast and neat they left no room for questions. But the worst part wasn't the story. It was how easy she made it sound. As if nothing about it needed to be earned. Not the trust, not the forgiveness. Just accepted. That evening, I stood in the doorway while she got ready for another night out. This time, she didn't pretend it was work. She said it was a company party, a big celebration for her promotion. "We're doing a theme," she said, rifling through her jewelry. Kind of ridiculous, honestly. Beach party in the city. Plastic palm trees, sand pits, glow sticks. You know how marketing gets. I didn't know, and I didn't ask. She turned around, holding up 2 pairs of earrings. "Which one?" I pointed vaguely at one. "Gold hoops." She smiled like I'd passed a test. Her makeup was perfect. Hair curled, sandals new. She wore a coral-colored wrap dress I hadn't seen before. Short enough to raise eyebrows, low enough to suggest she wasn't trying to be subtle. I noticed her applying a touch of perfume I hadn't smelled in months. The same one she wore when we first met. She sprayed it behind her ears, neck tilted like it was second nature. "You look great," I said. She smiled genuinely, as if I'd surprised her. "Thanks, babe." She left a few minutes later. I stood at the window, watching her get into an Uber, laughing at something on her phone before the door closed. The car pulled away. I didn't wait long before grabbing my keys. I didn't plan to catch her in anything. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I just couldn't sit still. The walls of the apartment felt like they were closing in, like everything inside them had been rearranged when I wasn't looking. I drove to the club she mentioned, some rooftop venue near the river, popular with corporate crowds trying to pretend they were still in college. It had neon signage, fake beach props, and a bouncer in a flamingo print shirt. I parked down the street, out of sight, and waited. Crowds moved in and out. Laughter spilled into the air like smoke. I scanned faces, unsure of what I expected to see. Then, just before midnight, I saw her. Hannah. She stepped out of the building, heels in one hand, drink in the other. Her hair was a little messier now, her laugh a little too loud. She wasn't alone. Walking beside her was a man I'd never seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, shirt unbuttoned just enough to be intentional. He had that look, the kind of confidence that comes from getting away with things. I watched as they walked side by side, close, laughing. Then, without hesitation, she reached for his hand. Not just a brush, not a friend's nudge. She held it, fingers interlocked. Something in my chest pulled tight. They walked like that for several steps, like they'd done it before, like it was normal, like it was allowed. Then, suddenly, she let go, as if something spooked her. She looked around quickly, nervously, her eyes darting like prey. She didn't see me. She turned to the man, said something with a forced smile, then threw her head back and laughed. He leaned in and whispered something into her ear. She didn't pull away. And then the DJ called for a contest. From inside the club, a voice boomed, "Let's play a game. Grab a mic and say something you'd never admit in real life." Cheers. Laughter. Hannah stepped up. I couldn't hear her at first. The music was too loud. But then the crowd hushed. She raised the mic, raised her glass, and with a smirk I didn't recognize, she said, "What if I started dating someone else? You wouldn't mind, right?" The crowd roared. Whistles. Applause. She curtsied, like it was a joke, like our marriage was a punchline. I don't remember walking back to my car. I just know that I was sitting in the driver's seat before I realized I was shaking. Hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. My jaw locked so tight it hurt. I didn't go home right away. I drove aimlessly. Up and down River Street, past closed restaurants, past the bridge where we'd once taken photos on our anniversary. I passed the diner we used to eat at on Sundays after church. I passed all the places where our story used to feel safe. It didn't feel safe anymore. Nothing did. At some point, I pulled into a gas station and sat there for what felt like an hour. I watched strangers come and go, lives that didn't feel like mine. I looked at my reflection in the window and barely recognized the man staring back. Tired, unshaven, hollow-eyed. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. I thought I'd scream. I didn't. I just stopped. Stopped hoping. Stopped waiting. Stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. When I got home, it was nearly 2 in the morning. The apartment was dark. She wasn't home yet. I didn't wait up. I didn't check my phone. I didn't even go to our bedroom. I laid down on the couch and stared at the ceiling until the sunrise painted the walls in a soft, indifferent gold. When I heard the door open, I didn't flinch. She crept in like a teenager, keys fumbling, heels in her hand again, whispering apologies to no one. She stopped when she saw me on the couch. "Thomas," she said softly. "You're up." I didn't answer. She hovered for a moment, then headed to the bathroom. The sound of the shower running was the only proof she still existed. I stared at the ceiling and let the silence wrap around me like armor. When she finally emerged, towel wrapped around her, hair damp, she avoided my eyes. "I didn't expect you to be up," she said again, like repeating it might make it matter. Still, I said nothing. She walked past me, dropped her bag near the door, and went to the bedroom. I sat there for another hour, unmoving. Eventually, I stood, walked to the kitchen, made coffee. Not for her. Just 1 cup. Just for me. And when I took the first sip, something inside me clicked. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a phase. It wasn't something we could talk through or cry about or forgive over pancakes and empty promises. This was a truth. Sharp, loud, unavoidable. And the worst part? She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. The day after the rooftop party, Hannah acted like nothing had happened. She moved around the apartment with her usual casual rhythm, humming while making coffee, replying to emails, folding laundry that had been sitting in the basket for 2 days. She even asked me what I wanted for dinner, like we were just another married couple on just another Sunday. Like she hadn't stood in front of a crowd the night before and made our marriage the subject of a drunken joke. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The truth had settled into me like a tide rising around my ankles. Not fast, not loud, just steady and undeniable. I'd spent the night before lying on the couch, eyes wide open in the dark, watching headlights from passing cars flicker across the ceiling. My thoughts weren't angry or panicked. They were methodical, mechanical, like someone flipping through files they didn't realize they'd been storing for months. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. When Hannah left to get groceries, something she hadn't done in weeks, and suddenly insisted she needed a reset, I opened my laptop. It wasn't the first time I'd collected evidence. For the past 2 months, I'd been paying attention. Quietly, carefully, not out of obsession, at least not at first, but because I needed to know whether the things I felt were real or just shadows in my own head. I created a folder, titled it Insurance. Like some part of me wanted to believe it wouldn't come to this. Inside were **TS, message logs, receipts, notes. Little pieces of Hannah's double life that I had quietly picked up and stored away while pretending not to notice the way she flinched when I touched her shoulder or turned her phone screen just slightly out of view. There was the restaurant receipt from the Hollow Branch, stamped with a 10:42 p.m. charge for 2 entrees and wine. The same night she'd said she had a budget meeting. There were the Instagram stories from her coworkers, showing her laughing beside men I didn't recognize. One of them clearly wearing the same blazer I saw her carrying home that morning outside the apartment. She hadn't even thought to block me from viewing their profiles. She just assumed I'd never look. I had **TS of texts, Not between her and the other man, those were carefully deleted, but between her and Marcy, the friend she always named as an alibi. Can you cover for me again tonight? You know the deal. Don't you think he's starting to suspect? Not if we don't give him a reason to. There was a picture, blurry, taken through my windshield from the night of the party. Her silhouette beside him, hand in hand, before she let go and scanned the crowd. That one I printed. Not because I needed to prove anything to anyone else, but because I needed to prove it to myself. I put all of it in a physical box. Printed copies, receipts, a flash drive with backups. I wasn't trying to ruin her. This wasn't about court or revenge or some dramatic gotcha moment. I just needed to see it in one place. Needed to face it. All of it without denial or emotional loopholes. When she came back, arms full of brown paper bags and overcompensating with enthusiastic small talk about organic spinach and how the cashier was super weird, I waited for the right moment. Came that afternoon. She was in the bedroom folding towels. I placed the box on the kitchen table. Open. Beside it, my laptop already logged in. The folder titled Insurance sat there in plain sight. When she came out, she paused. Saw the box. Saw the screen. Her smile faltered. She walked slowly toward the table, towel still in her hand. Her eyes moved from the folder on the screen to the stack of documents beside it. Thomas? She started, but her voice cracked on the second syllable. She reached out, touched the edge of the box like it might vanish if she didn't blink. I didn't say anything. I stood there, arms crossed, leaning against the fridge. My heart wasn't pounding. My face wasn't hot. I wasn't shaking. I was still. I had already felt the storm. This was what came after. She opened the box, pulled out a few papers. I watched her eyes scan the page. Her own words, her own photo, her own lies. The color drained from her face. She didn't cry. Her hands trembled as she picked up the next page. And the next, until she reached the bottom of the pile. She didn't sit down. She closed the lid slowly, her breath shaking. Looked at the laptop again. Reached out like she was about to touch the keyboard, then pulled her hand back. The silence was so complete I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway, second by second, like it was counting down to something, but we didn't know what. She finally spoke. Is this? How long have you? Her voice was small, not innocent, just deflated. 2 months, I said, give or take. She nodded like she was doing the math in her head, then whispered, why didn't you say anything? I didn't answer that. She already knew. Because every time I tried, she made me feel like the crazy one. Because every time I doubted her, she had an answer. So neat, so immediate, so ready. Because the weight of proof matters more than suspicion when the person you love is convincing. Because I wanted to believe her, more than I wanted the truth. She stood there a moment longer, then reached down, lifted the box, and held it to her chest like it weighed more than paper ever could. When she looked up at me again, her eyes were glossy, not with tears, with resignation, like she knew this moment had been coming, and now that it was here, she didn't have the strength to fight it. At the door, she hesitated, looked back, lips parted like she might say something, an apology, an explanation, even a last-ditch attempt at repair. But she didn't say anything. And I didn't offer her a way back in. She left the door slightly open behind her. I didn't close it. Not right away. I just stood there, alone in the kitchen, the fading scent of her perfume still hanging in the air like the memory of a conversation that had never happened. The apartment felt different already. Lighter. Not happier. Not yet. Just lighter. That night, I cleared out the rest of her things. Clothes, toiletries, books she hadn't touched in months. I packed them neatly. No dramatic tossing. No smashing of frames or slamming of drawers. Just quiet, efficient sorting. Like undoing a life one item at a time. I left one thing behind. A postcard. It had been wedged into the corner of our bathroom mirror for years. On the back, she had written, "You are my home." I didn't know what she meant when she wrote it. Now I knew she probably didn't either. I left it on her pillow. The next morning, her key was in the mailbox. No note. No call. Just that tiny metallic goodbye. I held it in my hand for a long time, then dropped it into the drawer with the spare batteries and receipts we never used. A drawer full of things meant for emergencies, even though the emergency had already come and gone. I opened my laptop again, deleted the folder. Not because I forgave her, but because I didn't need it anymore. The next morning, the apartment was silent. Hannah's scent lingered faintly on the air, like a memory pressed into the corners. The coffee she brewed the day before had left a trace in the cup she forgot on the counter. But she was gone. Again. I sat at the table staring at the empty box I had left for her, my fingers tracing the edge like it could tell me more than the contents ever had. And then my eyes drifted to the cardboard box tucked under the bed, the one I hadn't looked at yet. It wasn't fancy. No labels, no promises, just a plain container that had likely come with a move or been scavenged from some closet. I had almost forgotten it. Curiosity, or maybe something darker, pushed me to open it. Inside, letters. Dozens of them. Stacks of paper tied with ribbons. Folded envelopes stuffed with cards, notes, and scraps of lined paper. Some were neat, printed, formal even. Others were scrawled in shaky handwriting, desperate and in asterisk mate. Names I didn't recognize. Places I didn't know. Some were dated months ago, some years. I pulled one at random. The handwriting was elegant, looping. It was addressed to her, full of words about longing, admiration, the thrill of shared secrets, confessions of attention and desire. One letter ended with a date and a time, locations marked in the margin like a reminder to meet. Another was different, rougher, shorter, a message of what felt like obsession disguised as love. Words stacked like bricks, building a wall of devotion that only she could enter. I went through them systematically, one after another. Each envelope peeled back another layer. Some were dated before our wedding. Some were after. The words weren't just romantic. They were in asterisk made in ways that made my stomach turn. A betrayal that no casual glance could miss. Details about conversations, stolen moments, promises made behind my back. Mentions of things she claimed she hated or never did. A pattern emerged, carefully disguised as randomness, only visible once you saw enough pieces together. And then I found a note signed by John. The same John she had called a family friend the morning she came home in that car. He wrote of shared dinners, drives, evenings spent talking in quiet corners. He wrote about how they laughed, how he admired her ambition, how she made him feel alive in ways he couldn't describe. I stopped breathing. I reread the note, checking the signature, the handwriting, the date. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It wasn't some fleeting attraction. This wasn't the occasional lapse or a single slip in judgment. This was a lifestyle, a deliberate, layered, hidden life. Not just emotional affairs, not just brief encounters. A carefully constructed parallel world in which I did not exist, at least not in any meaningful way. She hadn't simply cheated. She had curated in asterisk Macy, attention, and affection elsewhere while keeping our home life untouched enough to remain unsuspected. Every receipt, every note, every message I had gathered suddenly fell into place. The late nights, the gym sessions, the sudden obsession with clothes, lingerie, perfumes, the careful guarding of her phone, the social media posts that no longer featured us. Everything I had brushed off as a phase or stress or new confidence was another brick in the wall of this other life she had built. I felt like the floor beneath me had dissolved, like I was dangling in darkness, trying to hold onto something that no longer existed. I picked up another letter. This one was recent, handwritten, slightly smudged. Perhaps she had been crying, or maybe she just wrote in haste. It read like a confession, but not to me. Not even an apology. Just recollections of moments she had spent with another man. Details that made my stomach churn. The way he looked at her, the things they laughed about, the plans they made in secret. I read it twice, 3 times. Each time, the words sank deeper, like stones tied to my chest. I realized then that I had been living with a lie, not a one-off deception, but a carefully maintained fiction. A duality. A life that included me only as a shadow, a participant in a script that no longer had me as a lead character. I closed my eyes. I remembered our home, the couch, the kitchen where she brewed coffee that wasn't for me anymore. The walls lined with memories that were mine alone, now punctuated by the knowledge that she had carried her heart somewhere else for months. Years, maybe. I felt a rage that was slow, suffocating, heavy. But beneath it was something darker, sharper, despair. Not for the relationship itself, I had already passed the point of mourning. But despair for the truth of human duplicity, for the reality that someone could live entirely separate lives in plain sight, in plain love, and I wouldn't even know. I went through the rest of the box methodically. I read the letters as if doing so might make me understand her choices, might make it feel less like a knife in the chest. Didn't. It only confirmed what I had already begged *N to accept. She had chosen to cultivate a separate, secret world, one I had no place in. The thrill of her other life wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, cynical, layered, hidden, beautiful to her perhaps, and completely destructive to me. I looked at the letters stacked before me and felt my vision go dark. Not physically, not literally, but emotionally, morally, spiritually. Everything that had guided me, everything that defined my trust and sense of belonging, flickered like a candle in a windless room. I didn't throw the letters away, didn't burn them, didn't fold them into another box and hide them. I set them aside. I needed them somehow, not for revenge, not for exposure, just to know the truth fully, to face it entirely, to understand that this had been the reality all along. It took hours to sift through the remaining contents. Each envelope a new revelation, each note another fracture in the narrative I thought I understood. By the time the sun began to set, I had become a man who had seen the totality of the betrayal, who had felt the full weight of the duplicity. I wasn't angry anymore, not fully. I was simply aware that the story I had thought we were living, the one with shared meals, vacations, quiet evenings on the couch, had excluded me for some time. I realized then that nothing would ever be the same. Not the apartment, not her, not me. The dual life she had cultivated had finally been revealed. And for the first time, I understood that it didn't matter why she had done it, or whether she regretted it. The truth was absolute, and my place in her story, if it had ever truly existed, was gone. I didn't call her, didn't ask her to explain. I packed the rest of her things quietly, leaving only the postcard she once wrote me. "You are my home." I archived the letters, the *TS, the receipts, not to punish, not for court, but to preserve the truth for myself. I erased her number, removed photos from my devices, and cleared our shared digital spaces. Every trace of her life intertwined with mine vanished. I realized closure wasn't about confrontation or anger. It was about reclaiming my life. And for the first time in months, I felt that strange, fragile thing, relief. I drove to our old lakeside cabin, leaving phones and schedules behind. Silence was complete. No interruptions, no expectations. I wrote a few thoughts, reflected, and slept deeply for the first time in weeks. A month later, an envelope arrived with a photo of us on our first Charleston trip, inscribed, "I really did feel it back then." I placed it in the folder and let it sit. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the morning light filter through the trees. Alone, unburdened, finally at peace with the life I had reclaimed.